Jungle Gym Jitters. Jerry J. Jingle had fun every day, for Jerry's dad George had a brain made for play. When Dad got an idea that planted its seed, fun would sprout up like a blossoming weed. Now, Jerry's mom, Midge, had been bugging his pop to clear out the jungle of junk in his shop, but Dad was distracted by silly squirrel pranks and got an idea for his stack of wood planks. By late afternoon, Dad had proudly unveiled the new jungle gym his hammer had nailed. Jerry hung loose with a monkey-faced frown while Judy, his sister, showed off upside down. That night after supper, as Jerry did math and Judy went up for her usual bath, nobody saw that while washing the dishes, Dad began planning his jungle gym wishes. That's what I do when I do dishes at night. At dawn the next day, Jerry jumped out of bed to a hammer that tap, tap, tapped in his head. His eyes grew in size at that overgrown sight of the jungle gym Dad had now tripled in height. Monday at work found George overreacting to playful ideas that became too distracting. As one might have guessed, the boss wasn't impressed, so he sent Dad home early to catch up on his rest. When Jerry came home, his mouth opened in awe. His friends were sky high on the giant seesaw. As he studied the moves of those strange seesaw sitters, he was suddenly sick with the jungle gym jitters. While dunking a donut the following morning, a vision of fun came to Dad without warning, and Jerry could tell by the way he was looking that this meant more jungle gym trouble was cooking. Long strings of tire swings swooped up through the sky as longingly Jerry watched life pass him by. A contest for King of the Jungle took place. Of course, Judy won with her usual grace. Who would have thought that just washing the car could make his dad act in a way this bizarre? Jerry ducked clear of the garden hose stream. To him, this was all one big terrible dream. But Jerry's worst nightmares would soon be outmatched by the tangle of tracks and long tunnels that scratched at the summery sky like some scribbly scrawl, with silvery loops that were 60 feet tall. His knees started knocking, his tongue started swelling. Jerry once lost his lunch, but that's not worth telling. The poor boy knew of his terrible curse. His jungle gym jitters would only get worse. In a couple of days, this prediction came true. Dad went off on safari, a trip to the zoo, and brought back a truckload of jingly critters whose animal antics gave Jerry worse jitters. The garage was demolished, and where it once stood was a towering giant of tires and wood, and animal acrobats swung through the sky while daredevil kids made up new ways to fly. Now Jerry's heart thumped as his ears started ringing. He hardly could stand all this swooping and swinging. To make matters worse, Jerry's house was a mess, and living there caused more emotional stress. For Dad had cut tunnels that ran through the place. The coaster now whooshed through their living room space. But worse than the noise in this upside-down dwelling were animal house guests you couldn't help smelling. Not seeing his family's growing frustration, Dad proudly made plans for a wild celebration. He mailed coconut invitations to all, and soon the whole town would be having a ball. The Jungle Bash happened that Saturday night. They all danced around in the glowing torchlight. The limbo dance contest was truly amazing as Jerry grabbed hold of a pole set ablazing. But the party soon went from the best to the worst when the mayor's grass hula skirt suddenly burst into flickering flames that flared from his fanny, then spread through the jungle to each nook and cranny. So the panicky crowd beat a hasty retreat to escape from the jungle gym's horrible heat. Jerry heard screams as the fire climbed higher. Judy was trapped in the sky in a tire. Up in the air, very high overhead, Judy hung on for dear life by a thread. Now Jerry was certain she'd fall any minute. If he was to save her, he'd better begin it. He rescued her on his giraffe elevator. "You're king of the jungle," he yelled to persuade her. As Judy snapped out of her terrified trance, she barely escaped by the seat of her pants. Then Jerry took charge of an army of elephants. He battled the fire with courage and confidence. The flames were no match for the streams from their noses. They put out that blaze with their wrinkly gray hoses. And everyone there learned a lesson that night, that courage means acting in spite of your fright. For Jerry had not only saved the day, he'd chased all his jungle gym jitters away.